Do you think a curtsy makes you more than a maid? The banker's voice cracked like a whip across the Rosemont lobby, making the silver tray in the middle-aged maid's hands tremble slightly. She merely dipped her head slightly, as she always did, saying nothing. But in that moment when the entire hall fell silent, something had started to crack. No one knew that the woman being humiliated that day was the one holding the ownership key to the very 38-story building they were standing in. Have you ever misjudged someone just because they wore a uniform? And if the one you looked down on turned out to be someone who could collapse your entire empire with one sentence, what would you do? This video isn't just about a humiliated maid. It's about a reversal of class right in the heart of Manhattan's elite. It will show you a secret 2-year plan to teach the world a lesson about dignity, how a 17-year-old girl raised in privilege shattered her entire family's silence with a single question. And the moment 500 guests stood up, not for Preston Lyle, but for the person they never even bothered to look in the eye. Before we dive into the details, ask yourself, if tomorrow you were handed absolute power, would you use it to speak up or to stay silent and observe? Stay with me, because in 25 minutes, you'll understand silence doesn't mean weakness. And sometimes the one wiping the table is the one writing your name on the final contract. The clock on the lobby wall had just struck 3:00 p.m. when she appeared light as a sunbeam spilling through the glass-paneled ceiling. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Wearing a simple black uniform with white gloves so pristine they didn't show a single crease, Gloria pushed the silver tray into the center of the Rosemont Hotel lobby, where a private afternoon tea was underway for 3 guests of the name-can't-be-misspelled tier. One of them, Mr. Carlton Lyle, lifted his eyes from his phone and looked Gloria over from head to toe, the way someone might assess a dress shirt that had been washed in the wrong cycle. Then he smiled. Do you think a curtsy makes you more than a maid? The question wasn't meant to be answered. It was designed to sink. Gloria remained still, bowing slightly as she always did. No trembling. No looking down. But within less than 3 seconds, every sound in the lobby, laughter, glass clinks, high heels, had stopped. A young receptionist at the counter unconsciously froze midway through entering a room number. A Japanese businessman had just set his newspaper down on the table. Even Carlton's wife Miriam narrowed her eyes, as if calculating whether Gloria's response might be disruptive enough to call security. But she didn't respond. She simply turned and poured tea into Miriam's cup as if the comment had never existed. Carlton chuckled dryly. See, that's the problem. You people think silence is dignity. At that moment, no one in the lobby knew the truth. The woman standing before them was not the afternoon shift server. She was the legal owner of the Rosemont building through an anonymous investment trust established by her late grandmother, Martha Bishop, one of the most discreet yet influential businesswomen in the Northeast. In just 12 days, the inheritance clause requiring her to live under the identity of an invisible person for 2 years would expire. And Carlton, the one who had just emphasized you people, was the 173rd person to insult her during that time. The only difference was he would be the last. If you owned a building you had to clean every day, what would you do when a tenant humiliated you? Carlton Lyle controls an investment fund worth over $18 billion. But today he just stepped onto a chessboard he didn't know he was playing on. Gloria walked out of the tea lounge. No one stopped her. No one apologized. No one realized something had just begun. Only one person, Lacey, the 17-year-old girl in a blue silk dress standing by the table, quietly watched her leave. She didn't know the woman's name was Gloria James, but her eyes had already said what came next. She didn't flinch. So maybe she's not the maid you think she is. What do you think will happen next? Will Carlton fall? Or will Gloria stay silent for 12 more days? The next chapter, where the truth begins to crack open, is waiting for you to discover. The elevator shifted gently up to the 32nd floor, as if even it was uneasy about what had just happened. Gloria stood alone in the glass-walled space, both hands gripping the handle of her cleaning cart. She didn't look in the mirror. She was far too familiar with that woman now, the upright posture. Hair neatly pinned, no trace of lipstick or perfume. A face people looked through, not at. For the past 23 months, she had become an expert at leaving no trace light footsteps, eyes that avoided just enough, a voice that never rose above, "Yet, ma'am." She never revealed anything. No emotion, no opinion, no self. But beneath that charcoal uniform was an asset no one could have imagined. 17 years ago, Martha Bishop, known in the press as the real estate ghost, secretly acquired the entire Rosemont property cluster. When she passed, hundreds of reporters swarmed her funeral, yet none knew the true heir was standing just a few meters away in an unbranded black dress. Gloria Mercé, she inherited over $43 billion, a long-term investment trust active across the Eastern U. Soniyuri, Sarneshivuri, and the ownership of the very hotel where she was wiping glass, folding napkins, and handling guest complaints. But it came with a condition: to live 2 years as the person the staff forgets to serve, no name revealed, no duty declined, and absolutely no retaliation to any insult. One day, you'll understand, Martha had written, "Power isn't something people hand you. It's something they expose when they think you don't have it." Gloria used to think that was a little cruel, until she saw exactly how Carlton looked at her, like a tool shaped like a person. The small apartment on the 35th floor, once a converted utility room, was where Gloria had lived throughout her trial. No official access from the public elevators. Every evening after her shift, she entered through the back, used a physical key, and walked down a narrow, unmarked corridor. Only one thing in that room hinted at who she really was: a safe embedded under the wooden floor. Each night, before bed, she'd open it not to check any balance but to pull out a worn letter. The final letter from Martha. You'll know you're ready when you no longer need anyone to confirm it. When the one who humiliates you no longer makes you angry, but makes you feel sorry for them. That afternoon, after Carlton mocked her curtsy in front of the crowded lobby, Gloria didn't cry. She simply returned to her room, brewed black tea, and wrote a line in her old notebook. Day 718. Still no retaliation. But today, someone saw. She didn't name names, but clearly, in the eyes of that girl in the blue silk dress, Lacey, there was something different from anyone else in that family. Some identities are hidden, not out of shame, but because they're being prepared for the exact right moment. Coming to Rosemont wasn't a spontaneous decision for Carlton Lyle. It was a move and a calculated plan. The black Bentley Bentayga SUV pulled up to the revolving doors. Before any staff could open it, the driver had already stepped out, retreating precisely 5 steps, as trained so as not to block the view. Carlton stepped out first. His charcoal gray suit, tailored in London, hugged his frame as if his shoulders had been born for it. His eyes swept the lobby like he was appraising a company in desperate need of restructuring. He greeted no one. He didn't need to traverse, to re. Miriam Lyle followed, her pearl-colored cashmere coat gliding across the red carpet like a cold mist. She said nothing, but her gaze flicked from the marble pillars to the front desk clerk like she was scanning for flaws. A faint smirk formed when she noticed the red tulips instead of the white orchids. She had requested a detail that would be meticulously recorded in her internal feedback for hotel management after the gala. Next came Kyle, 24 years old, one hand dragging a Rimowa suitcase, the other holding up his phone for a live stream. Back at the Rosemont, baby, where the poor pretend they're elite for $900 a night. No one in the family corrected Kyle anymore. They were used to his tone, and truth be told, Carlton thought the boy wasn't wrong. Finally came Lacey, her blonde hair tied low, her eyes as quiet as a morning lake, holding a book thicker than the lunch buffet. No one paid her much attention, and perhaps she didn't need them to. It was only as they passed the tea lounge that Lacey paused. Her eyes caught the back of Gloria, silently pushing a tea cart behind the scenes. No words, no gestures, but something in that moment made her glance back just in time to see Carlton adjusting his cuff with a triumphant look. Don't let the spotlight blind you. In the shadows, Carlton is preparing to deliver the most important speech of his career, unaware that his entire performance has already been seen before he opens his mouth. The Lyle family suite 2801 didn't appear on the reservation map. It was a hidden booking reserved only for guests who didn't want to share a floor with anyone holding a membership card. That was also why Carlton chose the Rosemont for this stop, not for the service, but for the optics. The hotel was one of 5 venues recommended by media consultants as a safe photo op zone for potential 2026 candidates. Tomorrow night's Summit of Generosity Charity Gala, hosted right in the first floor Grand Hall, would serve as the unofficial stage for a speech he had rewritten 3 times. Carlton Lyle, independent candidate for governor of New York. "We don't need to win, just make enough noise," Carlton said as the suite door closed behind them. Miriam sat on the white sofa, flipping through the gala seating chart enclosed in a gold-embossed envelope. Hartford Bank, Morrison Family, Hillman Foundation, they're all confirmed. If we keep that 7-seat club intact, the press will write the rest for us. Kyle didn't care about elections. "As long as I get a story standing next to that orchid statue, my followers will think I'm throwing the party," he said. No one laughed. Lacey sat at the corner table, still staring at her book, but her finger had stopped turning the page since number 12. While Carlton was planning to ring the bell of social responsibility and instructing the lighting crew to tone down the oil on his face for the cameras, Gloria was quietly inspecting the tablecloths for the ballroom floor. And in that same moment, Lacey saw her again through the transparent glass, the woman setting down silver platters, her hands catching the chandelier's light, shimmering brighter than the bank logo on the folder in her father's hand. From the outside, everyone assumed Carlton was the one controlling everything. But sometimes, the only person who truly controls the atmosphere in a room is the one who can silence it with a single glance. The staff break room on the second floor had no windows. Just a cold blue-white tube light hanging from the ceiling, casting its glare over a stainless steel table where Gloria's untouched morning tea still sat. A paper clung lightly to the surface, the afternoon task list. Dust hallway on the 26th floor, replaced towels in suite 2801, check scented candles in Carlton Lyle's lounge. That last line had been added in red ink. Someone had changed her schedule without asking. Rosa entered, a woman from Haiti, apron stained from the day's work, her face etched with the muscle memory of a lifetime spent bracing herself. "I heard what he said." In the lounge, in front of everyone. Gloria didn't answer. She just placed a fingertip on the rim of her teacup, as if to hold on to a warmth that no longer existed. "You don't have to do his towels," Rosa said. "I already told the supervisor. I'll take it." "No," Gloria replied softly. "I'll do it." Silence. Rosa stared at her, the kind of stare that comes from someone who's swallowed humiliation all her life, yet never learned how to wear that feeling when it's witnessed by someone else. "People like Carlton," Rosa muttered. "They don't even know who they're speaking to." Gloria smiled faintly, though her eyes didn't follow. "Which is exactly why I'm still here." She stood up, tore the task list in half, folded it into quarters, and tucked it into her pocket. Not out of anger, but because she needed to remember. In the hallway, her steps regained their steady rhythm. But her heart didn't. Not because of the insult, but because of the look from the girl nearby, Lacey. She had turned her head, not out of curiosity, but because something in her gut whispered, that wasn't right. And in 2 years of living unseen, Gloria had come to know this with certainty. When someone is young enough to ask the right questions and quiet enough to truly listen, they become the first ripple in something much bigger than themselves. Lacey sat by the floor-to-ceiling window on the 28th floor, a quiet reading nook drenched in late afternoon light, where only the wind tapping the metal frame dared interrupt. She held a glass of mint tea, no ice untouched. Her eyes were fixed on her smartwatch. The clip was 37 seconds long. No music, no filters. Just a grainy slice of the hotel lobby from earlier that day, capturing Carlton's voice. "You people think silence is dignity." And Gloria's response, silence. Not out of fear, but something quieter, something heavier. Lacey had watched it 4 times, not because it shocked her, but because something in her throat tightened every time Gloria bowed her head. It wasn't submission. It was forgiveness, as if she were forgiving a room that didn't ask to be forgiven. Lacey opened her laptop. She typed Gloria Rosemont staff. Nothing. Then, Tibro Rickenham. G. James internal profile only. No photo. Started 1 year, 11 months, 21 days ago. No birth date, no contact, no digital trace beyond an internal code. It wasn't just privacy. It was erasure intentional and complete. She reached out and touched the screen, as if doing so could pull that face forward. Bring her closer. See her, truly. Who are you really? Lacey whispered it not like a journalist chasing a story, but like a girl who once knew what it felt like to be misjudged and was trying to recognize someone else who might have been, too. 6 months earlier, Lacey had been spotted in the hotel kitchen, chatting with a dishwasher just asking what he thought of the gala's dinner menu. Her mother, when she found out, had said only this: "You don't need to befriend the help to prove you're decent. Let them work." Lacey didn't argue, but from that day forward, she'd listened more than anyone else in her family ever had. And now, the girl who was raised to walk past was the only one who had turned around to look back. Lacey didn't know exactly what compelled her to type that name, Evelyn Bishop. Maybe it was the look on Gloria's face when she was insulted. Not fear, but something closer to someone who had survived far worse. Or maybe it was the handwriting in the notebook Gloria always carried slanted, precise strokes that looked identical to the letter Evelyn once published in Legacy Women of America, under the section titled Letters from Titans. Lacey had read it in the university library. There was no photo of the granddaughter in the article, just a vague caption. The sole heir remains unnamed per confidentiality clauses in Evelyn's final will. Lacey opened Google Maps and typed in the old address where Evelyn's journey began. 4141 Auburn Ave, Brooklyn. She clicked into Street View. A gray brick wall cast its shadow over a quiet corner. And right in front of the building stood a small laundry shop. On its glass door, a handwritten note taped inside read, "Managed by G. James O. Renador II." Lacey shot upright in her seat. G. James's Hideris could not be a coincidence. The Ryan and Nana Rutherburn with Remmers. She reopened Rosemont's internal staff records. Gloria legally registered as G. James had joined exactly 3 months after Evelyn passed away. She moved on to check the building's ownership structure in anonymous LLC in Delaware. But in the Evelyn Foundation's most recent financial disclosure, there was a line in the appendix. Operational costs for the Rosemont Hotel currently listed under social conditioning assets. Lacey didn't know exactly what social conditioning meant, but she now knew this. Carlton Lyle was not the most powerful person in the hotel tonight, and the woman he called Maid might be the one silently watching how everyone behaves when they think no one's watching. 8 to 12 the next morning, Gloria walked past the executive offices to drop off the inspection log for the 27th floor. The manager's door was slightly ajar. Inside, a man's voice, low but sharp, snapped through the gap. "No, we don't send this upstairs. It stays internal. For now." She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. But just as she passed the doorway, one phrase stopped her mid-step. "Lobby clip." She didn't turn back, didn't react. She simply placed the logbook on the table outside and kept walking like she'd heard nothing. Down on the 3rd floor, she headed straight into the laundry room. Alone. From her pocket, she pulled out an old wristwatch, a Fossil, its glass fogged, its time always off. She pried open the back. Inside was a tiny, carefully folded piece of paper. The handwriting belonged to Martha. Written 4 years ago. "When the world starts talking about you behind closed doors, that's the first sign you're no longer invisible. Be ready." Gloria didn't know if the video had leaked yet, but she knew this. If the managers were already holding closed-door meetings about it, then the clip was no longer in staff hands. It was now in the hands of those with a reason to bury the truth. Not to protect her, but to protect the brand, and that, she knew, was more dangerous than any public insult. That afternoon, Gloria changed her shift assignment. She volunteered to handle lighting checks and table linens in the grand ballroom, the very place where Carlton would deliver his speech. No one asked her to, but she needed to inspect every mic, every row of chairs, every security camera and the direction it faced. Because if someone was trying to hide that footage, then sooner or later, they might try to erase the person in it too. The Summit of Generosity Charity Gala was scheduled to begin at 7 p. But by 6:15, the ground floor of the Rosemont Hotel had transformed. A red carpet stretched from the revolving door to the base of the twin staircases. Under the warm golden lights, each guest entered like a star walking onto a film set. Cameras, champagne flutes, the click of flashbulbs. Every detail followed the script. Except one. Gloria. She stood behind a secondary cocktail station, dressed in all black, the uniform for the bar support team. She'd swapped shifts. No one questioned it. People like her, the ones who didn't cause trouble, didn't ask for anything, were always left alone. And that was the most dangerous thing about her. Gloria didn't step on stage. She didn't need a microphone, but she watched. Everyone, then make their money near. Carlton Lyle entered at 6:59, right on time. Black Xenia tuxedo, silver silk tie, and a diamond lapel pin shaped like the foundation's crest on his chest. "Make sure the spotlights hit the back wall, not my forehead," he told the lighting tech. Miriam followed in an amber couture gown. Kyle, for the first time in his life, didn't bring his phone reminded 3 times not to accidentally go live. Lacey arrived last. A classic navy gown, hair in a soft bun. She carried no purse, but in her hand was something Carlton didn't notice. A smart watch, the same one she hadn't worn in 3 months, until tonight. From her shadowed corner near table 7, Gloria saw it all. One small turn, and she had a clear view of the gala's center stage mic. Her fingers brushed the folded note in her pocket, Martha's old message. She wasn't planning to step forward. Not yet. But she knew this wasn't a gala. This was a performance. Shorny Hadina Wessons. And the entire ballroom was wearing masks. 7:32 p.m. The stage lights shifted to amber. The jazz background softened. The MC finished his introduction, and Carlton Lyle took the stage. No need for notes. No need to read the prompter. He'd rehearsed this speech 47 times over the past 2 weeks. Not to memorize it, but to turn it into instinctive language. Ready for a political leap. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carlton began, his voice low, measured, authoritative. "Tonight, we're not just giving, we're affirming that compassion remains the cornerstone of America." Applause rolled across the room. In cue, backed by music. Uplighting from the hardwood floor made Carlton look less like a man and more like a monument. At table 1, Miriam smiled her perfect, camera-ready smile. Kyle nodded slowly as if absorbing every word, though in truth, he was still thinking about how to repost the after-party story. And Lacey, she didn't clap. Her hands stayed below the table, one finger resting on the face of her smartwatch. The clip was still in ready-to-share mode. She hadn't tapped it, but her gaze was locked on Gloria, standing near the south exit, where the light only caught the edge of her face. No words were exchanged, but in that moment of silent eye contact, a message passed between them, far louder than anything Carlton was about to say. Because responsibility isn't just about giving, it's about doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Another round of applause. Gloria pressed her lips together. She'd heard 100 speeches like this before, but what kept her frozen in place tonight wasn't the lie. It was that Carlton, unknowingly, was describing himself, in a voice he thought no one remembered. Carlton stepped to the left side of the stage, a familiar motion, rehearsed like stagecraft. "Someone once asked me, Mr. Lyle, where do you find the inspiration for your leadership philosophy wherein worry you reach one?" He paused deliberately, a trick learned from TED Talks. The crowd leaned in, just as he hoped. Not from books, not from numbers, but from a moment, just yesterday morning right here, in this hotel. A few heads lifted. Lacey held her breath. Gloria closed her eyes. Carlton raised his hand, palm open, inviting. In the lobby, I witnessed a quiet but profound scene. A woman, in a staff uniform, lowered her head before us, and I reminded her that humility doesn't come from posture. Silence. No applause. Not a stir. It's in moments like those, he continued, unaware of the shifting air, that we discover who among us truly understands power, and who merely performs it. At table 4, an older woman leaned to her companion. Is he telling a story about humiliating someone? In the tech booth, a foundation media assistant whispered. Did he get clearance to share that? On the event control iPad, A small red button pulsed, the internal feed ready to broadcast the clip. To the main screen, if someone tapped yes, Carlton still smiled. He believed he had just landed. His most authentic and human moment. Gloria hadn't moved, but her hand slid to the edge of her apron, like someone fixing their collar. Before stepping out of character, Carlton had planned to end his speech with a famous quote from Roosevelt. He had rehearsed the exact pause, the measured nod, the perfect photo op moment. But the next second, the stage lights shifted to cold white. No more amber glow. The large screen behind him, which had displayed the foundation's logo, flickered. And then, a live image appeared. The hotel lobby. Distant audio. Slight static. Carlton, in the same gray suit from the day before, stood at the center of the lobby, pointing at a woman in uniform. Do you think a curtsy makes you more than a maid? Every sound in the ballroom vanished. Not because the clip was loud, but because the silence spread outward, like the tide pulling back before a storm. The video continued. Carlton let out a dry chuckle. See, that's the problem. You people think silence is dignity. The screen froze. On the image of Gloria turning away. Shoulders squared, eyes dry. On stage, Carlton froze. He didn't turn, didn't look back. But the flow of his speech was severed. His mouth stayed slightly open, as if it still wanted to deliver the quote. But his face had left the room. At table 2, a journalist pulled out her phone. Not to record, but to type the first line of her article. Promising candidate implodes at charity gala. Lacey stood up. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her eyes locked on the far left corner of the hall, where Gloria still stood, not flinching, not hiding. No one had invited her to speak. No microphone turned in her direction. But as Lacey stepped forward, the sound of her heels echoed through the ballroom like a chapel under tension. Carlton saw his daughter approaching, but didn't understand. Miriam clenched the edge of her dress. Kyle opened his mouth, ready to stop her, but no words came out. Lacey turned to face the entire room. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't ask for permission. She simply said, "What you just saw wasn't an accident. It wasn't a joke. It was who we are when we think no one's watching." A low murmur spread across the tables. She hadn't called Carlton out by name, but no one needed her to. Lacey turned to her father. Calmly, no tears, no shouting. "She didn't embarrass you, Dad. You embarrassed yourself." And tonight, she stood taller than any speech you practiced. Carlton tried to respond. "Lacey, this isn't the time." "Then when is it?" She cut him off. For the first time in her life, a woman endured every kind of condescension, quietly working in a hotel that she let us live in, and you think the lesson was in her curtsy. Her voice caught just for a beat, then steadied. The lesson was in her silence. But you were too loud to hear it. No one interrupted. No one called security, because no one in that room could bear to look back at Carlton. At the edge of the ballroom, Gloria remained still. Her eyes had softened, but her hands clenched the edge of her apron. Not out of anger, but something else entirely. For the first time, someone had spoken up, not to defend her, but to name the silence for what it truly was. Carlton could no longer move. Under the cold white spotlight, his eyes flicked side to side, as if searching for a different script. But every word of defense had been left behind, along with the applause, that never came. And then, Gloria stepped forward. No one called her name. No spotlight followed. No announcer introduced her. Just a woman in a black apron, worn rubber shoes, and a folded piece of paper, creased as if it had been carried far too long, waiting for this one moment. All eyes turned to her. Carlton started to speak, but Miriam touched his hand. She didn't whisper, "Don't," but that single touch carried the full weight of surrender. Gloria didn't march to the mic. She walked the long way around, smoothing the folds of her uniform as she went. And when she stood center stage, she wasn't loud. She only needed one line. "I'm sorry for interrupting your gala, but I believe It's time someone cleaned the air in this room. No one laughed. No one looked away. She held up the folded paper. Not to read, but to offer. Wish Shurnet Stormash. This is a copy of the property deed, covering the entire Rosemont complex, held in trust by Evelyn Bishop, for her only granddaughter. She looked straight at Carlton. No hatred, no sarcasm. Yes, Mr. Lyle Sunmon, I am not your maid. I'm simply the one who let you borrow this ballroom. Behind her, the giant screen lit up again, this time showing a black and white photo. Evelyn Bishop holding a mop bucket, beside her signature and a quote, "Those who rise quietly rise longest." The room didn't erupt. They didn't know what to do, because real power never needs a gavel. Carlton stood still, as if someone had pulled the sound out of the world around him. His face no longer carried the smug calm of a man accustomed to the microphone. Gloria calmly folded the document and placed it on the center table of the stage. She didn't turn to leave. She looked at him, not to gloat, but to offer a choice for another one-on-one month. I'm not going to ask you to leave this hotel. Murmurs rippled through the room. Carlton blinked, like a man just granted mercy. But Gloria cut that hope off in one clean breath. I'm inviting you to stay. Miriam gripped her handbag tighter. Kyle collapsed into his chair. Lacey didn't flinch. Carlton forced a smile, brittle and unsure. You mean? Gloria stepped half a pace closer. Stay, and for the next month, live as any of my staff would. Make the beds, espresso churning, change the linens, deliver water to the conference rooms. And every morning, walk into this hotel not as a speaker, but as a glass polisher. No one laughed. No one dared treat this like a stunt. Because Gloria didn't threaten with Surrey Yurimon. She simply described a reality she had lived, and now was offering Carlton a chance to experience. You don't have to bow like I once did. Just stay quiet long enough to truly listen the way I had to learn. From the back of the room, the soft clink of a glass broke the silence. A man nodded, then another. It wasn't applause. It was the sound of quiet waves beginning to rise. Carlton swallowed hard, and in his voice, for the first time, was something completely unfamiliar. Smallness. Day one began at 5:45 a.m. Emil. Carlton stepped into the hotel's laundry corridor, dressed in a gray t-shirt with the hotel logo. The kind of shirt he used to think was just for background people. No Rolex, no pre-made black coffee, just the smell of bleach, the hum of industrial dryers, and the sharp ring of shift bells. Rosa was his trainer for the day. She wasn't cold. She wasn't smug. She simply handed him a bin of clean towels and said, "Floor 18, 2 sets per room. And remember, no creases on the pillow edges." Carlton wanted to say something. Something like, "I used to manage 3,000 employees." But the sentence dissolved in his throat. As the service elevator stopped, and he stepped into the hallway of the hotel, for the first time, not to be served, but to serve. Room 1812. The guest had checked out at 4 a.m. Carlton fumbled with the fitted sheet, his hands trembling slightly as he folded pillowcases. The shoes he wore didn't glide like Italian leather. They squeaked, a sound that reminded him this was no longer his kingdom. As he pushed the bin of used linen down the hallway, a woman in a crisp business suit passed him. She didn't greet him, didn't glance his way, didn't say thank you. Carlton froze for a second. That feeling, he realized, was exactly the one he had once handed out to others, like loose change. Mayor Schutzsturm. Downstairs, in a quiet corner of the staff lounge, Gloria was reviewing a financial report. She knew Carlton was on the 18th floor, but she wasn't watching him. She didn't need to, because the real lesson doesn't need a teacher. It writes itself. On the one willing to learn. Week 2, Carlton no longer wheezed, pushing the laundry cart up the basement ramp. No one praised him. No one cheered him on. But when Louise, the assistant cook, gave a short nod and said, "Clean towel," Nice fold. It was the first time Carlton felt seen, without a name tag. Each day, he wore the same gray shirt, took the same back stairwell, ate at the same staff table, with people he once only knew by room number or shift code. And somewhere between folding linen and mopping stairwells, he learned what 30 years of running a bank never taught him. That beneath the floors no one looked down at, there was a whole world, with its own order. No microphone, but still heard. Rosa stayed quiet, but every time he grabbed the wrong cleaning salt, she simply nudged the correct bottle his way. No judgment, no smirk. Ellis, the intern who'd uploaded that lobby video, cracked his first joke. Boss, if you make your bed like this at home, your wife probably makes you sleep on the couch. Carlton didn't argue. He just smiled and refolded the sheet. One afternoon, while wiping the floor-to-ceiling glass on level 19, a returning guest paused. How long have you worked here? Carlton replied softly. 2 weeks? The guest nodded. You look like someone who once knew everything and finally started learning. There were no applause, no articles, no LinkedIn posts about growth. But during one lunch break, as Carlton placed his tray down in the staff canteen, Marcus, the bellman, scooted a chair out. Sit him, 2 chairs left. And no matter how much work's left, we eat first. And in that moment, that invitation said more than every interview Carlton had ever given. They had to ride with everyone else. Miriam Lyle hated shared elevators. But after day 6, when Gloria's temporary internal equality policy suspended VIP access, she had to press the same buttons as everyone else. The first time, she wore gloves. The next time, she didn't. Her shift began in the hotel mailroom, the first place she'd ever been, ignored. A Vietnamese clerk named Trin, who didn't know her face or last name, handed her the wrong invoice. Miriam was ready to snap, but stopped, one. Trin bowed slightly, handed her the correct one. Her eyes showed no fear, just exhaustion. Miriam signed in silence, and for the first time, realized she might not be as special as she'd always assumed. Kyle, on the other hand, spent 3 days grumbling about the no phone in service zones rule. But by day 4, when he had to deliver 18 meal trays to a boardroom, without spilling a drop of tomato glaze, the only thing he asked was, is there a faster way to stack these? Marcus, the longtime bellman, showed him how to balance plates with the palm, not the wrist. Kyle didn't say thank you. But the next day, when Marcus walked past, Kyle nodded and carried his tray. The right way, Miriam began bringing coffee down to the staff lounge. She didn't say much, but everyone noticed. She brewed it herself, poured it for the person beside her. Not because someone told her to, but because no one did. And that made it real. Lacey went into it one. She didn't have to change. She just watched. But for the first time, she saw her family sit in silence. The kind of silence that didn't shrink the room, but made space for something new to grow. 1 month later, no one talked about the gala scandal anymore. But no one looked at the Rosemont staff the same way, either. Carlton Lyle never held a press conference. He never made a teary confession video. But he did appear at the Workforce Inclusion Forum, not as a keynote speaker, but as part of the logistics crew. He set up name tags for arriving guests. He dusted the tables before they sat. And when an elderly man dropped a stack of papers, Carlton bent down and picked them up with both hands. At the registration table, Lacey checked in the delegates. No longer standing behind anyone. Miriam passed by, placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. No words needed. When the program ended, the host called for the anonymous donor, who funded Rosemont's training initiative, to step forward. Gloria declined. She remained in the last row. Same black uniform, same worn shoes. But this time, the entire room stood up. No drums, no music, just applause. Slow as she could sure turn a show, even milk on the wantinin. Like every step, she'd taken over the past 2 years, unseen. On the screen behind her, a black and white photo appeared. Hands pouring tea. No facer, just hands. And below it, the words, "She never raised her voice. She raised people." Have you ever met someone who didn't need to speak, but silenced the whole room just by walking in? Have you ever witnessed kindness, not in words, but in how someone treated the invisible among us? Thank you for watching Unveiled Wealth, where every story is a mirror, reflecting how we see others and ourselves. If you've ever been misjudged or quietly did the right thing without anyone noticing, tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss the next story, where ordinary people carry extraordinary weight